On a bitterly cold winter day in Washington, D.C., the atmosphere inside the United States Secret Service headquarters was as tense as ever. Agents were busy filing reports, monitoring security feeds, and answering urgent calls. Then, without warning, the heavy doors swung open. A man stepped inside. No announcement, no security detail, just his unmistakable presence. The once busy room fell into stunned silence. It was Donald Trump. Agents paused mid-task, exchanging confused glances. No one had been informed of his arrival. A voice finally broke the silence. "Mr. Trump, what brings you here?" Trump scanned the room, his gaze sharp, his voice firm. "I need to find someone, an agent who saved my life years ago, but his name has been erased from every record. I won't leave here until I know the truth." A heavy silence settled over the room. Someone had once saved Trump's life. But why was there no trace of him? Was he searching for a forgotten hero, or uncovering a secret that was never meant to be found? Jonathan Reyes, the director of the Secret Service, stepped forward, his expression unreadable. A seasoned leader who had served under multiple presidents, he had seen many things in his career, but never had Trump walked into headquarters unannounced. "You're saying an agent saved your life? Please, Mr. President, tell me more." Trump nodded, taking a slow glance around the room before speaking. "It was 1982. I was a young businessman expanding my empire. Back then I thought success was measured by numbers, skyscrapers, million-dollar deals. I never imagined that one night I'd be standing face to face with death." His voice dropped, his eyes distant, as if replaying a memory long buried. "That night, I had just left an important meeting in New York. I got into my car, started driving home, unaware that someone was watching me." His voice dropped lower, each word cutting through the silence like a blade. "As I turned into a narrow alley, an SUV suddenly swerved in front of me, blocking my path. Before I could react, 4 men stepped out, all armed. Before I even had the chance to process what was happening, my car door was yanked open, and I was dragged outside. The agents in the room held their breath. A businessman ambushed in the heart of New York. This was no ordinary crime. They threw me to the ground. One of them stepped forward, pressed a gun against my head. I remember exactly what he said. Trump clenched his jaw, as if he could still feel the cold steel of the barrel against his skin. "You think you can walk into our world without paying the price?" Reyes frowned. "Do you know who they were?" Trump shook his head. "At the time, I had no idea, but later I learned the truth. They were part of a powerful criminal organization, controlling entire industries in New York's underground. Without knowing it, I had stepped into their territory, and that night, they planned to teach me a lesson, or end my story for good." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "If it hadn't been for that man, I wouldn't be standing here today." The agents exchanged glances. "What man, sir?" Trump took a deep breath, steadying himself before speaking. Just when I thought it was over, a voice rang out from the darkness. His eyes narrowed, reliving the moment. "Drop your weapons. If you don't, there won't be a second warning." The tension in the room thickened. One of them laughed, tightened his grip on the trigger, but before he could pull it, a bullet tore through his hand. A gunshot echoed through the alley, and then, out of nowhere, I saw a figure emerge from the shadows, moving faster than anyone could react. Trump paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, eyes cold and sharp. He was an undercover Secret Service agent. Alone, he took on 4 armed men, wounded, outnumbered. But he didn't stop. He pulled me up, dragged me into another alley, and got me out of there. Blood soaked through his coat, but he didn't care. The agent stood frozen, absorbing the weight of his words. And then, when I tried to ask his name, he only said one thing: "Never let them win." Trump swallowed hard, his voice quieter now, but filled with emotion. I never saw him again. The next day I tried to find out who he was, but no one knew, no records, no traces. It was as if he never existed. Director Reyes exchanged glances with several agents. "Sir, do you remember anything? Anything at all that could help us identify him?" Trump nodded. He had a long scar on his left hand. I remember it clearly because when he pulled me to run, I saw it up close. And before he disappeared into the night, he said one name: Shadow 1. The room went still. A few agents exchanged uneasy whispers. Reyes took a deep breath. "Shadow 1 is not just a name, sir. Trump narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Reyes crossed his arms, his voice lower, more serious. "I've been in this agency for over 20 years, and that name I've only heard it once in my entire career." Trump held his gaze. "I don't care what happened. I just want one thing: find him. Or at least, find the truth." A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Reyes gave a slow nod. "If he ever existed, we'll find him." But deep down, Reyes knew that this search wasn't just about finding a man. It was about unlocking a door that many had tried to keep shut for decades. And once that door opened, no one could predict what would come next. The search for Shadow One had begun.